Welcome to 28.5 Women's Basketball, where we explore a unique and authentic perspective on the women's game, break down upcoming matchups, and discuss the latest news and trends in women's basketball. We are your hosts. I'm Sydney Story, and I played basketball at the University of Tennessee under Pat Summitt.
And I'm Becca Goodman, and I played at the University of Notre Dame under Muffet McGraw. And we're thrilled to have you join us today. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoy what you hear, be sure to tune in each week and don't forget to follow, download, and listen to give an assist and share the love. Now let's get started with today's episode.
Hey Sid, how's it going? Happy Final Four.
Happy Final Four tonight. I can't believe it. It's so exciting.
It's absolutely insane we're already here. I think maybe the bracket has gone the majority of the way we would hope it would be. There's been some disappointing performances, but other than that, it is what it is. I just think it's wild that we're already at the final two games of the season.
Yeah, it's crazy. It goes so fast. Like we were in the middle of it, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is a long season. I forgot how long season was. And then before you know it, it's Final Four time. So I agree too. I think a lot of these teams that are here have really played well all season. So I don't think there's any big surprises there. I think heading in, if you look at both who you and I had in the Final Four, we had Notre Dame in there. We had USC in there. Obviously, with Juju Watkins going down with USC, I think that really hurt them quite a bit there. And then Notre Dame, we'll probably talk about it a little bit here, but really kind of fell short this end of the season. So kind of two there that maybe didn't really pan out like we thought they would, but that's why you have to show up and play the games.
Yep, absolutely. So jumping into just our four quarters today, right? Our first one, we're going to dive into that Sweet 16 and some of those Elite Eight games, the winners, the losers, and who moved on. Second quarter, we're going to do a quick little Final Four preview. We got 3 number 1 seeds and 1 number 2 seed in there, so should be some really good games. Third quarter, we're going to do a quick trip down Final Four lane where Sid and I are just going to give a little sprinkle of what we experienced in our Final Fours. There's a whole parade and it's a whole production, so just a lot of good stuff there to just touch on. And then our fourth quarter, we're going to do some in the news. I'm sure everybody has seen on ESPN or any sort of media streaming platform, Instagram, there's just a lot of things moving and shaking up. So we're going to touch on a few of those. So let's jump in.
Let's do this. So quarter number 1, Sweet 16 Elite 8 games we want to highlight there. So we did see some of those teams fall in the Sweet 16. So both our teams, Becca, Tennessee, Notre Dame, fell short in the Sweet 16 games. North Carolina, Ole Miss, NC State, Kansas State, Oklahoma, and Maryland all falling in the Sweet 16. I think from my end, I was hoping Tennessee could pull off the upset. We were a 5 seed, arguably deserved that 5 seed, especially how we ended the regular season. But I do think that we shocked a few people, I think. I think we performed a little bit better here than I thought we would in the tournament, which is good to see. I'm very excited for next year in the Tennessee Lady Vols as Kim Caldwell brings in more of her recruits, got a solid recruiting class coming in. I just think her system is now in place. It takes a while to get, I would imagine, a system like that, how different it is in place. So if she can keep some of those players around, hopefully a lot don't transfer out, and now you add in some of those newbies, how stronger are they running that system next year, especially with some of the talent she's bringing in? I think that's going to be a huge shakeup in the SEC. We competed this year in the SEC, but I think we're capable of winning more of those games next year. So I think that's going to be an interesting one. So it's hard for me. As a Lady Vol, I expect to be in Final Fours. So to say it's a moral victory for the Lady Vols is hard to do. But if you asked me coming into this season with a brand new coach and Kim Caldwell, all of us didn't really know how that was going to pan out this year. I do think she performed better than I thought we were going to. So I'm going to give her a couple flowers there, right? I don't think the job is anywhere near done. She's got to turn around with a great offseason here and really hit the ground running next year. But I think she has the building blocks to do that for next year. So excited for Tennessee. I'm going to kick it over to you, Becca, if you want to talk a little ND.
Yeah. So obviously the elephant in the room, Notre Dame, super upsetting, just really wasn't able to hold their own against TCU. We had a couple good quarters, but I just think, I'm going to give props where props are due. We were kind of a little hard on Haley Van Lith with how much she moved. She transferred, 3 times within her career in college, learning a bit more about her. And this is why I think it's super important to just always kind of, glasses always half full. I didn't realize that she had, she suffered from some mental health items and issues. She just, and that's the thing is like college basketball is, or sports, D1 athletics is your life. The good, the bad, the ugly. And in this day and age with all this stuff on social media and where everyone can be behind a keyboard and think they know you and they know what to say and do and how it should be done, it's crazy to me how bold people are. And again, I don't know her situation or to what degree, but I'm just gonna give her flowers because she played her butt off. This girl, I mean, she was quiet the first half. She had a super strong second half. Notre Dame just, oh man, we think about how they played in the ACC tournament and then how they ended their season. It kind of was just, and we talk about peaking at the right time. It just felt like we went down a hill fast. Like we started the season super high. I mean, TCU had our number. That was the second time they had beaten us. But I'm just going to give props. Haley Van Lith had 26 points, led her team in every way, shape, and form. Free throw line, 3-point line, driving, attacking, kicking. Like it was her show, and props to her because she played phenomenal. Our guards just really didn't show up. I just think we didn't have an answer. We didn't really focus in on the defensive end. That was the most important part of our game that we really needed to. And Hannah going 3 of 19 didn't help. It was rough. We shot awful from the floor, but you can shoot awful but play defense and still win the ball game. So I just think we didn't do either of those, and TCU was the better team, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I watched the game also, and for me, and I don't want to cast stones here, I think Notre Dame is one of those blue blood programs, and Niele has stepped right in and kept that thing running. I don't think anyone should doubt that in my mind. What is interesting to me in watching Notre Dame is how they utilize their post players. It is a different approach than some of these teams who are successfully reaching Final Fours right now. So I think we can go down the list a little bit here. Look at Dawn Staley. And if you look at the championship she's won or the Final Four she's made recently, and you think about who the best player on that team is, and you think about Asia Wilson, you think about Camilla, you think about now Chloe Kitts, how they've developed her as a post player and how she stepped right up and she is capable of bringing that inside presence. She's a different player than the other two because she's a little bit leaner and plays a little bit different of a style, but she is a go-to for them, and they're able to work the ball through her. I think Notre Dame and Maddie Westbelt and Leah King and Kate Cavall, you have the bodies to do it. What was interesting to me in the TCU game is Maddie Westbelt took more 3-pointers than she did 2-pointers.
Yeah.
And I'm stepping back and I'm like, there's something wrong here where you run the entire season basically through Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles and throw Sonia Citron in there also because they're fantastic guards. They're some of the best guards in the country. But if you want to make a deep run, and you and I both know how long this season is, you have got to string those post players along a little bit more. And I thought Leah King, for the most part, held her own throughout the entire season.
Definitely.
Maddie Westbelt had to come back injured. So maybe not the same player and maybe still recovering some off of that. No idea. But to me, I look at it, and South Carolina is one example, right? You can go down the line with some of this and some of the good teams and how they utilize their post play. Sarah Strong for UConn is an excellent post player right now. Sedona Prince for TCU, right? Like they get her involved. They ran the 2-man game a lot against Notre Dame. And I just think that down the stretch when Notre Dame needed buckets, if your guards, your shots aren't falling, you've got good defenders on you. If you can't turn to that post game and that old school post up, that old school high-low game, whatever you want to run, it's hard. It's hard to win consecutive games in the tournament, especially as teams get better and better as you go. I just thought that was something that was a little bit obvious to me, is like, how do they better involve post players? That Princeton offense maybe is a way to do it, right? Like you're more familiar with that than I am. I just thought that was kind of obvious, especially when you look at the stat line for like a Maddie Westbelt.
Yeah, well, and as you said it, I pulled it up and it's like we shot 25 more shots than TCU. 25 more shots.
Crazy. That's
So
the Tennessee. That's what
I
they're
know,
trying
right?
to do.
Like we
Yeah.
were 32% from the floor, but with their 44 shots, they were 50%. So just my favorite word, my family knows this, my husband, efficiency. They were so efficient in the shots they took where I feel like Notre Dame was trying to just like I didn't really see a ton of offense. I saw maybe the looks of it in like a high four cross, like we were running chin, having them move, but then it went one on one and people were just expected to play. And it's when we're struggling, I would just love for us to have like a go-to hitter. I know we used to have these with Natalie Novosel, Lindsay Schrader, Brittany Mount, right? Like somebody who's going to get you the bucket, period. And then get you into a flow again, especially if you're not playing that consistent defense where you need something. But 1,000% agree with you. Notre Dame, this is their blue collar. This is them. There's no reason to run for the hills or anything. I think it was just disappointing when you know how good they can play. A lot of people were expecting them to be that upset because they should have been in everyone's eyes the 2 seed, and just to see them fall early in the Sweet 16. Again, right? We're used to that Final Four, and I was in 1, right? But that's kind of the pedigree that Notre Dame has had following that. So definitely tough to see.
Yeah, tough to see. And we'll talk about it towards the end here. The transfer portal is going to be a whole second factor there. We'll see. You guys will rebound. I have faith that they're going to bring in some great talent. And then let's jump to the Elite Eight losers, right? So we fast forward to those Elite Eight games. Duke, LSU, USC, and TCU all fall in those Elite Eight games. And wow, were those games great. Like it's so telling where our game has evolved, and almost every single game is just so exciting to watch. And I was rooting for TCU after that Notre Dame win. Like I'm like, maybe this team can do it. They were kind of painting that story. You talked about Haley Van Lith, Sedona Prince, and the career that she had, the journey she went on. USC, you're rooting for USC now, kind of like the underdog without Juju. So kind of rooting there a little bit. LSU's got some good talent, fun to watch, Anisa Morrow and Flage. And then there's Duke, right? Like Duke, I think, and you and I highlighted Duke all year because of their defense. But Duke really, in my mind, peaked at the right time. And they were able to string enough offense along to make that Elite Eight. I think if you look at the young talent in like a Toby Fournier and what Duke needs to do in the portal, needs to do with any high school recruiting they do, if they can bring in a couple more scorers and still teach and expect the discipline that they bring on defense, Duke is going to be here to stay for the next few years. I think Kara Lawson has really figured that out, and she's hitting her stride as a coach. So it's kind of fun to watch them all year, honestly.
Yeah, and it was nuts to see Duke had a chance there against South Carolina. I mean, they only ended up winning. South Carolina ended up winning by 4, but those last couple minutes, Duke just had some bad turnovers where I think that need to focus and have that strong go-to player offensively, they didn't have that. That's where I think they're a bit young in the sense of what they really need in order to help them be successful. But I think they played amazing. Couldn't agree with you more. Peaked at the right time. And I think it just goes to show you, if you play defense, you're going to get and win games and go far. Like, I mean, obviously you need an offensive threat, and they have those. Toby Fournier stepping up. There was a lot of other guard play that was just, it looked good for Duke, honestly. And I think Kara Lawson kind of is in her flow over there. I think it's going to be good. And I think she knows the pieces that she needs to add. And I mean, look out for Duke without a doubt.
Yeah, and it's kind of fun. That's another blue blood basketball program. Like when we were growing up and even in college, Gail Gaskenhor was there, and she was a good coach. Like Duke has been there before, so to see Kara kind of bringing that level back is pretty cool. So stay tuned for Duke, because they might be making a Final Four next year if they really hit the ground running here. I think it's a possibility for them.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's jump into our second quarter where we're going to preview that Final Four. We mentioned earlier we have 3 number 1 seeds in there and 1 number 2 seed. I think this is crazy that Gino said it best, and I'm kind of pulling from from our fourth quarter, but he said, I think it's nuts that UConn is seen as the underdog and that them beating USC is an upset, which is true, right? And it's just from the sense of the seeds. Like, let's be honest, UConn has played well. They show up. That's one thing I will say about UConn. It always seems, and this is hard for me to say, I'm going to swallow it as I say it, but there's no like lag in their play. There's no games they just get blown out. He always seems to manage to get them to come and compete when they need to. And I think that's amazing. I honestly I do. Um but going into that Final Four, right? Our first game is going to be South Carolina versus Texas at 7 p.m. Eastern. That is tonight. Tune in, check it out, because this is going to be the fourth time that these two teams are going to be playing one another. One, I think that's absolutely wild. They're both in the same conference. They play twice during the year, and then they played again in the SEC final. So again, this is SEC to the fourth degree, right? They continue to play, and this is kind of what we mentioned when we first saw the bracket come out, that we wanted a bit of the committee to think about it that way, and we're disappointed it didn't happen. These are two teams that are rightfully so could be in the finals. I think it would have been awesome to see them on the other sides of the bracket. But Sid, what do you think about this matchup with South Carolina versus Texas?
Yeah, just hitting on the setup, and we've kind of harped on this a little bit. It is interesting, right? Because there were the 4 number 1 seeds. They put UCLA and USC on one side, and they put South Carolina and Texas on the other side. It's Big Ten versus SEC at that point. So it's possible they're trying to draw that matchup in the championship. And so they're going to have them face each other potentially in the Final Four if they win out, which almost all of them did except for USC. Mm-hmm. So maybe there's some thought there, but honestly, the bracket, and I'll say it again, we harped on it. Like I just thought there were a lot of rematches within it this year. And I just hope they reevaluate and keep fine-tuning this for next year and we see some better matchups. Because honestly, having watched South Carolina and Texas already 3 times this year, and now for the 4th time, I'm not saying it makes the Final Four any less entertaining. It's going to be very entertaining to watch both these teams because of the style that they bring and how well they're playing. But it's the 4th time we're watching them play, So like as a fan, a true fan of women's basketball at the college level here, I would like to see somebody else new in there, and it's a tribute to them because they've been able to get there. Like it is not easy reaching these Final Fours. So like shout out to South Carolina and Texas for getting there, but now you got to play each other again for the 4th time. But if I think about the game, I would go South Carolina on this one purely because of their depth. And we talk about that all the time. I think they're playing well. South Carolina can't play around, though. There's been a couple games where they, in the first half, haven't really come out strong and they've let other teams hang around. They're capable of putting the hammer down on anybody. And we've seen that throughout the year, but they need to come off to that fast start. And it's the same thing with Texas. Like it's a 2-way street here. Like Booker's got to be hitting her mid-range. Harmon's got to be taking care of the ball. It's going to be, I think, an absolute showdown. I think South Carolina wins this one, but I don't think it's going to be by a blowout margin by any means.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. I just think South Carolina has the experience. This is the first time Texas has reached a Final Four in 20 years. So props to them. That's definitely the right way you want your program to go. Huge accomplishment. But as we mentioned, kind of having the rematch with South Carolina for the 4th time, where South Carolina is up currently 2-1. I mean, it could be that Texas comes out rolling and South Carolina overlooks them, but I just think Dawn Staley always does a good job. Even when her team is losing, like in that Duke game, they were down and she sat on the bench, kind of composed herself. And she made those in-game adjustments that were needed to get them up and win that game. So again, also rocking with what you said, I think South Carolina will win this one. Let's jump to our second game of that Final Four preview, where this is a first-time matchup this season, which this is the exciting part. This is where you get to see and you're not really sure, it's the unknown, right? So at 9 p.m. Eastern, you have UCLA versus UConn. And I think this is going to be an interesting battle. When you look at Kiki Rice versus Paige, you look at Sarah Strong versus Lauren Betts, and all the pieces that fill that, right? You have Jaquez and AZ Fudd. I just think it's going to be an interesting picture. Like, I really do. And I think for the first time, them matching up, you see them on TV, you understand what it is, but truly, this will be, I think, the ultimate test for UConn. I mean, every game that you get farther in the tournament is, but this is the number one overall. This is UCLA, who's been talked about all season. You have Lauren Betts. You have all the hype around it, right? The lights are on them. It'll be interesting to see if UConn can compete. What do you think of this one?
I think I might go UConn on this one.
Really?
I know. I mean, obviously, any of these games can go either way. Like all four of these teams are just so good right now. I think I'm going Paige Beckers just because she has absolutely put that team on her back the past couple games here. And if she does that against UCLA, in my mind, she outscores the UCLA guards.
Yeah.
And that's huge. And so now it's how much does Sarah Strong show up, get the buckets that she needs. Obviously, Lauren Betts is down there on the UCLA side, so it's not going to be easy because of the size down low that UCLA has. But if Paige shows up and is the player that she's been, UConn wins this one.
Yeah, Paige has been phenomenal. I think this is peak performance of a veteran player, understands the moment and is prepared for it. And again, this is where I'm just coming with like, Gino can get his team to play. This is a coach who just understands the beat of his team and what he has to do. How about last game where he was interviewed by Holly Rowe and she's like, what do you have to do to get your team going? And he's like, Paige just needs to shoot more. I mean, I don't know, maybe you should talk to her. Paige literally went out there the second half and was unbelievable. She's rocking it. You can tell this is a senior that doesn't want her season to end, and she's playing like it without a doubt.
Yeah, and I mean, I went to Tennessee, so it's hard for me to cheer for UConn here, but I'm pulling for Paige. It's her senior year, and this could be really the icing on the cake for her college career, and would be well deserved with the injuries she had and how she's come back and responded to all of that. The leader that she is. I mean, the way her teammates talk about her, I think speaks volumes to the type of leader that she is. And then to see her, like we've said, step up to get her team here to the Final Four, I think that means a ton. And I remember going through it, and maybe we can jump into our third quarter if you want to.
Let's do it. Perfect.
Okay. So third quarter, all about our Final Four experience when we went. But I remember talking in the locker room, and Pat was telling us, like, hey, our whole goal the entire tournament, the entire season is to make the Final Four. Once we make the Final Four, then we'll dial in and figure it out. And that's the goal all season, is to make that Final Four. And then you are so close. You've got to win that Final Four game. And then you turn around, you have a very short prep time, and you play that championship game. So you really have to be so dialed. It is absolutely a business trip with a lot of fun and distraction sprinkled in. So it's just going to be interesting to see how those other four teams react to that this week. So talking about our Final Fours, I think what's fun, and I'm taking my family, my husband, our two kids, we're going to be there tonight at the games and then through Sunday for the championship, is when we played and won the championship. When I played and we won the championship, it was in Tampa. So I'm so excited. It's like kind of like this
that's awesome
reunion thing, right? Like, so the way I remember it as a player versus now getting to experience it as a fan, taking my kids back there, having my husband see it. My mother and father-in-law are also coming. Like, it's just going to be, I think that's going to be very fun and sentimental for me because it was such an awesome experience. That Final Four is amazing. Everything that they roll out for you. Like, some of my biggest memories were the Final Four banquet when they have all the coaches up there and there's like interviews that they do. And it's like this big, nice, fancy dinner. We got to go on a boat cruise in Tampa afterwards. Like, they just really go all out for the players. And then there's things like autograph sessions and things like that get a little taxing as you're trying to rest up and be ready to play. But I think overall for these players, it's such a cool and fun experience. So I'm like thrilled for them, but also kind of fun to go back and experience it in a different way.
Yeah, that's very cool. I didn't know that that's where you guys won it. That's absolutely a good experience.
It's kind of fun, right?
Yeah. So for my Final Four experience, it was in Indy. So it was we got to stay in the state. We had a police escort down. We got to go outside Conseco at the time, now Gainbridge Fieldhouse, sit inside the Indy 500 car. Again, what you mentioned, I think ours was called like Cirque du Soleil. So we had our banquet. We got to do like a little like walk down the runway like a red carpet. It was fun. You get to pick out your rings at that banquet if you were to win or have the runner up, the size and the style. That's always pretty cool. Got to dress up, and then, there's just the fun stuff you do while you're still in your basketball mode, right? You still have to go to your scout, you still have to go to pregame shoot around, stuff like that. So we had dinner at the Indianapolis Zoo in the dolphin
Oh,
area. So
cool.
we were underneath like the water. We had dinner there. And then we went to St. Elmo's one night. But it was just, again, the media stuff you do also after shoot around. You're with your team, but then you have the individual ones where people can come to yours and ask you questions, and you're there for so long. And obviously Skylar had a ton. So it was like, oh, we almost done here. But it's just a whole different heightened experience and exposure. We had some celebrities that popped in that wanted to say hi, and you're trying to stay focused this whole time about, I'm at the Final Four. And I think for us, that first game we played UConn, we won. That was huge for us. I'd never beaten UConn. That was my one and only time. So it was like, hallelujah.
When it counted.
Yeah, that was and that was the fourth time we had played them that season. So again, that wears on people, but also it helped us, I guess. But losing in the national championship really sucked, especially it being in Indy. But I will just say, the experience of getting there and the production that goes on. My whole family was there. My brother flew in from Virginia at the time. My little cousins are there. I mean, it was a loss, but it was such a win because that experience that we can all share after the fact, it's pretty awesome. I mean, there's nothing like it, and I'm just glad I got to experience it. Where some programs like Tennessee and you have Candace Parker, I couldn't imagine winning, but also kind of going a couple times. I think that would be an absolute blast. So all in all, good experience. Glad it worked out. Wish we would have won, obviously, but
And it's cool. You mentioned family because they do comp you tickets where your family gets to sit in the family section, which you have that for all games, but to get that for the Final Four is that much more special. So they can come down and don't have to worry about paying for their tickets that weekend is like I think a nice touch. It's a super good thing for all the families that want to come see their kids play. I mean, it's a big deal, right?
yeah, and shout out to V. She was one of our walk-ons. She knew I had a ton of family coming in, so she's like, "Hey, I have a couple extra." I was like, "Thank you." She's like, "It's your senior year, blah, blah." I'm like, "Thank you so much." So
Amazing.
my brother from Virginia flew in like that day. It was pretty crazy. So it's definitely an experience, and I hope these four teams are really taking it in. I think maybe it's an experience that kind of gets overlooked, but it's not a lot of teams, only 4 a year get this experience. So I hope
Right.
they make the most of it, enjoy it, and the best team wins.
That's right. Such a cool thing. And let's jump into our fourth quarter. So we're going to shift gears off the Final Four a little bit here and talk about what's in the news. So the first one up here is that infamous, I'm going to call it infamous now because it's going to be, was there last year, here again, probably only getting worse, transfer portal. So over 1,100 players on the women's side alone in the last week have entered that portal. I don't even know what to say to that. It's insane.
Yeah. And this is like, for this to be just in 1 week, imagine, I think it'll be really telling after the national championship, which ones and who and from what teams really go in. Obviously, we all know NIL, the biggest beast of them all, is, I think, the main culprit here, right? I'm just going to throw it out and say it is what it is. A lot of these players hope they maybe can get more elsewhere, more exposure. Maybe they have a promise if they go somewhere, they'll get XY money, right? So talking about transfers, Olivia Miles from Notre Dame, she has 1 year of eligibility left. We kind of thought she would either enter the draft where she'd probably be the top 2 pick. I think it'd be between her and Paige. Or she could come back for her 5th year. She decided to enter the portal, which I can only imagine is a business decision, change of venue, get some money. And it rightfully so. I mean, I'm not going to say I wasn't like blindsided by it. I thought it was absolutely crazy because I just don't think it was something that was top of mind for people that she would look elsewhere. But I think she can get more money than she would in the WNBA with just NIL deals elsewhere than Notre Dame. And I how can you blame somebody for just trying to get their
Yeah,
bag, right? Like that.
absolutely. In 1 year, I mean, so you're trying to capitalize on that. And I think she was probably looking at the WNBA and thinking, okay, in the college game, I'm a top dog right now.
Yep.
In the WNBA, there are so many good players in the WNBA. I'm not knocking Olivia Miles, but she kind of
Right.
blends in a little bit more in the WNBA, right? So
Yeah.
she is more marketable. She's worth more right now in the college game. And that rookie contract in the WNBA is awful. And
Yeah.
it's supposed to get better in the next couple of years. So she goes and plays one more year of college and it gets better, hopefully, here for that rookie salary after that. It's a smart move. I think, like you said, a business decision. You can't blame the kid. I honestly would have been awesome if she was coming back to Notre Dame because I thought she really had such a good career there. And honestly, like Neil Ivy let her do her thing, if you ask
Right.
me. It's
Yep.
obvious. So I think she'll pick this pretty wisely. I'm sure they're going to throw a lot of money at her. We talk about some of these SEC schools who are throwing money at kids.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's going to be interesting to see where she does end up. And it's going to be fun to watch her. But I just, in the back of my mind, it's hard to follow teams right now and really support teams when every year it's a revolving door. Every year, all these players are basically free agents and can move as they want. And I think that hopefully here we get some more legislation and some more rules by the NCAA because it's just not fun for the overall game. I think coaching right now is probably very difficult. And every
Absolutely.
coach is faced with this, especially at this top level. And you've got players that are maybe thinking coaches are too hard on them or that these practices are hostile. And you can talk about that if you want to. But like for me, it's not necessarily greener on the other side. You played for Muffet, I played for Pat. So God knows we went through some really tough practices. God knows there were days where Pat absolutely didn't even want to look at us, right?
Yep.
It's a business for them too. They're trying to win. This is their job on the line. So that comes out at the players at times, right? They're trying to push you. They're trying to make you better. They're not happy with where you're at times throughout the season. It's a long season. So you're going to have coaches that straight up come at you and expect you to perform every day. And when you're not doing that, they're going to let you know about it. That's just kind of the reality and what these coaches do. So if you think you're going somewhere else and you're not going to get treated that way, you better choose wisely and really do your homework there because it's hard to find some of those coaches, I think. I'm a little old school here, so maybe it's changed a little bit, and I think it has, but they're still going to get at you.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. I think you and I were from that time period where it was you get through it and get over it, right? Like it makes you better. It helps you in life. It absolutely has helped me in my corporate career and job. I just think it's wild that, we have Olivia Miles from Notre Dame, Cody McMahon from Ohio State, Tania Latson from Florida State. I mean, these are big top dogs from programs. And then not only that, but layer in like other players who weren't as. So here's my thing. If these three are making moves, whether they're not a fan of the coach, the environment, they want more money elsewhere, imagine those players who are also in the portal because they didn't. That's what the portal's for, right? Like they didn't play. They want a new experience. They realized this wasn't a fit for them. Like how it's not even I mean at this point women's basketball could be like the men's side where coaches are just going into the portal to get players because and every year is a new one. I think that's a little wild. I also want to give credit to Audie Crooks because we all know she didn't have the best season this year, right? At the beginning, they were a top 7 team. They were ranked really high. She's from Iowa State. They didn't really have they lost a lot of games. A lot of games that honestly I think we all thought were pretty winnable. She came out on Instagram and said, "Dear Cyclone Nation, thank you to all the coaches and fans that have supported me on this journey. After much thought and consideration, quit asking. I'm right where I want to be. Let's run it back. The grass is greener where you water it." And I think that's super telling for her. She was a name. She was a well-known name early on, and maybe that might have fallen off a bit, but maybe she realizes she has more work to do on her game and she wants to just continue to buy in with Coach Bill and get after it again and run it back. And I think that's really honorable and notable. Somebody who knows, her NIL deals might be great where she currently is, but I definitely think we've talked about this before. NIL and the transfer portal are kind of the same evil. You're going into it to better yourself while people were using the transfer portal to get a better experience out of it. So I think it just is what it is, and I hope we get some rules around it. I'm not about people not getting money and getting paid for what they do. I think these kids are so young. It's a lot of money. I hope they're managing it appropriately. If I was in college at this point, I'd be like, why are these people talking like that? They're haters. I'm not. I just, you don't understand what this money could do for you long term. Investments, managing of it, and I just stocks, but I mean, it could go on, but yeah, it's pretty nuts. This is pretty nuts, and I think it's only going to get a little nuttier if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, I'm with you. And who knows? Over 1,100 right now. This number might rise quite a bit. We're gonna find out. So it's gonna be interesting, and we'll probably come back in a couple of weeks and talk about it. That's our game plan, right? So we'll see where some of these girls end up. The next thing here is all about Gino and UConn. And UConn being the, quote, underdog and last game being an upset he found unreal. Also, timing of the women's game versus the men's shorter window. Gino also commented on this and was upset.
Yeah. I think we touched on the whole underdog, them being a 2 seed, them upsetting USC. So we kind of got that knocked out in that second or first quarter there. But I think it's interesting that whoever, and he mentioned he knows who scheduled this, he knows who made these decisions. The men's tournament started after the women's. So every weekend there's men and women's basketball. It's the same, right? It's the first 2 rounds, then the Sweet 16, Elite 8. The women played. Their last game was Monday, the 31st.
And a pretty late game too.
Late game.
Right?
And he highlighted, like, they got to fly back. You have a day or two at home, maybe even not. You got to come back out there Tuesday or Wednesday because then they play Friday. So
for the biggest game of their life, right? That's what he's talking about. Yeah.
I completely agree. But the men ended Sunday and they don't play till Saturday. So the days are off where it should have been the men start playing this weekend first and the women are second, but they moved it the opposite. And I just think that's complete BS. When these are the biggest games of your life, I honestly wish when we did the Final Four, I was like, I wish the Final Four and the national championship game were 1 week after the other. I wish it wasn't like this tight back. These are the biggest games of your life. You want to make, you know what I mean? It's just so intense. But I also just think it's crazy that whoever scheduled this absolutely messed up. This is insane to me. This turnaround time with travel and all the things we just talked about with the Final Four, the parade and such. I think it's pretty nuts. And he was mad. Gino was mad. I mean, he highlighted he knows who made the call. This was BS. It shouldn't have happened. They got to get this right. Hopefully we figure it out. And honestly, the NCAA is just making money on it. So they don't really care. Sure. But the players, the coaches, the travel, the prep, all that wasn't taken into account. Yeah. And I don't think they care. And that's really messed up.
Yeah, I do think when you talk money here for the women's tournament versus the men's, I mean, look at the first round, those first couple games when they're on campuses and you get that seed. And so then you get to host and all this stuff. They're not doing that on the men's side.
No.
They're paying for locations and there's no home court advantage during the tournament. And it works well for some teams, right? But this year was interesting because we saw a lot of those 5 seeds upset the 4 seeds on their home courts.
Yep.
But why are we having that in the women's game? Yeah, it's great for some of the fans in those areas to be able to go watch their team. But it is, I think, in the long run, a huge advantage for those teams. Make it a little bit more even. I like the men do. The men, there's not home games like that.
Yeah.
I just think that's another way that they're kind of cheaping out on the women's game a little bit. Some fans might like it. Some people might like it. And I get that. That's fair. But it's not fair for the actual competition. And that's what this is truly about first.
Yeah. And that's another thing Gino mentioned is these super regionals, like for UConn to have to go all the way to Spokane, then fly back. He's like, you're not going to let our fans get back in time, have enough planned travel to even get there. It's these super regionals aren't really helping anybody. And the NCAA is looking at it from a profit machine as opposed to the fans of the teams being there to support and just travel schedule. I mean, I think it's pretty nuts, quick turnaround, and just again, there's some things we wish we had a pulse on, or we could like vote on, and that one would be all these matchups that are rematches in the most important games early on. This is actually another one I chalk up to the list here.
Yeah, and it's great to see these coaches sticking up for it a little bit and taking to social media and in the press conferences, just going right at it. I think
For sure.
that's the right thing to do, especially Gino in the position he's in. You saw Kim Mulkey doing it for LSU, also harping on these same things. So it's good to see them just vocalizing it because I think there's a lot of truth to it for sure. And then the last thing we had here for in the news is the drum roll Naismith Player of the Year goes to Juju Watkins.
Woo!
Woohoo. We talked about this one, I would say 3/4 of the way through the season ish, where we mentioned it could be Juju, could be Lauren Betts, could be Hannah Hidalgo. Those were kind of the three that really had separated themselves in our mind. Yep. And the way that Juju handled the end of conference play there by being able to beat UCLA and upset them twice, I thought that was huge for her in getting this award. And obviously the entire season, she just had a great season. Very unfortunate that she tore her ACL there at the end, but very well deserved for Juju. And I think Paige is going to make a run at this Final Four, and we'll see if Paige is able to get the MVP of the Final Four. If they keep winning, that could be where Paige really makes a mark there.
Yeah, definitely. I think Juju, without a doubt, deserves this. She's kind of had USC on her back, pulling them along the whole year. I think, honestly, unfortunately, her injury almost made the team realize their capabilities, right? They played well. I thought this was the best I had seen all the other players play, and that's not a knock on Juju. I just think a lot of people get complacent when she's on the court because she's the go-to. And I think it's important that everyone realizes their own skill set and value. And honestly, this all might just make USC only better. So props to Juju for an amazing year. I hope she heals, gets better soon. Obviously, the game will miss her while she's gone, but come back better than ever. And I think USC will as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Corey Close, AP Coach of the Year, well deserved. Mm-hmm. First year in the Big Ten. And if you look at the Big Ten and what UCLA and USC brought, the Big Ten is that much more of a stronger conference now. These two teams, 1 and 2 in the finish, I mean, really a great ad for the Big Ten when you look at what they're able to bring. And Corey Close, props to her. And she's in the Final Four here, could go all the way. Hell of a coach. She really has UCLA and all year has had UCLA playing very well. And I'm excited to see some of those coaching moves, some of those halftime adjustments in the Final Four here to see how she's able to cap this thing off.
Yeah, props to her as well. I think change of conference, change of environment, always challenging, but I think they rose to the occasion. Only having the 2 losses to USC, which is, someone in their home state, someone they're very familiar with and around a lot. I think it just shows the dominance of their game and their skill set. Very excited to see them play against UConn tonight and see if they can make it to the finals here. And maybe we have a South Carolina UCLA matchup where it's the biggest of the big programs, not only in the name from Dawn Staley and their record and what they do, and then UCLA being the new juggernauts who have kind of been that consistency all season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are some great points there. And let's go ahead and recap today's episode. So the first quarter, we talked about the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games. Second quarter, we did the Final Four preview. Third quarter, it was a trip down memory lane for Becca and myself, that Final Four lane, talked a little bit about our experiences in the Final Four. And then the fourth quarter here is a little bit more about in the news and what's happening around the game. So all in all, a great episode. We really appreciate everyone tuning in. We are going to be off next week, but then going to try to hit it the following week and really do kind of the recap of the season. We'll talk a little bit more, I'm sure, about that transfer portal and where some of these players are ending up, and really just give our full season, first season for us recap for 28.5 women's basketball.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing who wins it all. The big ship, the big dance, who takes the cake. But yeah, thanks for everyone for listening. Well, as Sid said, we'll have this episode, take a little break, and then recap. Just get a nice little look back, a season wrap, if you will, and then we'll head into our postseason, working on a few things and get ready for the following. So look forward for that final episode here in a week or so. Thanks for listening. I'm just excited. I mean, the Final Four is here. This is exactly what this whole podcast and why we wanted to talk about it, and a lot of things moving and grooving here. We'll hit the transfer portal, new coaching changes, and kind of wrap from there. But everyone tune in tonight, check out this Final Four and see who wins it.
All right. Thanks everyone for listening. We really appreciate you. And I'll talk to you soon, Becca.
See you, Sid.
That's the 28.5 final buzzer for today's episode. Don't forget to hit follow and download on your preferred podcast platform to catch every play-by-play. New episodes drop each week throughout the season.
If you've enjoyed our courtside chat, drop us a review or follow us on our social media accounts where you can send us questions that may be selected for our Team Huddle Q&A episodes. And remember, from females who have played the game, the size of the ball matters.